Midnight. The emergency room doors slide open with a pneumatic hiss, and the sound cuts through everything like a blade wrapped in ice. Rain hammers the pavement outside. A child stumbles through, barefoot, her yellow sundress torn and hanging 2 sizes too small against her skeletal frame. 6-year-old Emma Castellano. Her left arm hangs at an unnatural angle. Blood streams from a gash on her forehead, mixing with rain and tears. The waiting room doesn't notice at first. A man with a broken collarbone reads a 3-week-old magazine. An elderly woman sits with ice wrapped in paper towels. Then the child's legs give way. Nora Sinclair doesn't think. She moves. The backpack falls from her shoulders, the only thing she owns in this world, hitting linoleum. She crosses the waiting room in 4 strides, catching Emma before the small body crumples completely. The child is warm and trembling, like a bird that has been flying through a storm for hours and hours. Emma's lips form words over and over, a whisper that breaks with each breath. Daddy! Daddy! Where is Daddy? I want my daddy. Nora holds her. This woman, this impossibly thin woman with dirt under her fingernails and a hole in her left shoe, holds the child like she is made of crystal. Her hands, calloused from 8 years of double shifts at the Harrington Hotel, scarred from burns and cuts and the 1,000 small violences of poverty, cradle Emma with absolute tenderness. You are safe now, Nora whispers. You are safe. I have you. Nurses rush over. A gurney appears. They lift Emma gently, and Nora moves with them, her hand never leaving the child's shoulder. Then the automatic doors slide open again. The entire emergency room stills. He enters like winter entering a room, the temperature drops, the light changes, the oxygen seems to thin. Nicholas Castellano. 6'3". Korean features carved as if from stone, his face a map of controlled violence. A scar cuts through his left eyebrow like a slash of black ink. He wears a suit so perfectly tailored, so precisely constructed, that it costs more than Nora's rent for 6 months. Behind him, Marco on the left and Theo on the right, both men broad-shouldered and hard-eyed, both of them reaching for weapons they will not draw here, not yet, not in front of a room full of witnesses and fluorescent lights. Nicholas's eyes scan the emergency room in 0.3 seconds. They land on the small figure in the hospital gown. They land on the girl in his daughter's arms. He takes 3 steps forward. The sound of his expensive shoes against the linoleum echoes like a timer counting down. A doctor's clipboard clatters to the floor. Someone's phone buzzes. Nobody answers it. Nobody moves. Nora looks up. Their eyes meet. She has no idea she is holding the daughter of the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. She has no idea that Emma Castellano has been missing for 3 months, that every corner of this city has been searched by men willing to burn buildings, destroy businesses, torture informants for information. She has no idea that Nicholas would have flooded this entire hospital with his own blood to find her. She has no idea that in this moment, with his daughter safe in the arms of a stranger, something fundamental shifts inside Nicholas Castellano's chest, something that has been locked away and calcified for 15 years suddenly cracks open like ice breaking under spring sun. What she does not know is that this random act of compassion, this moment of a homeless woman sprinting across an emergency room to catch a falling child, has just placed her at the center of the most dangerous man's world. And that nobody, absolutely nobody, survives that position unchanged. Nicholas's jaw tightens. He steps closer. The sound of his breathing fills the silence, deep, controlled, like a predator confirming the safety of its den. Emma. His voice comes out like thunder rolled across a valley. Emma, look at me. The child turns her head toward him, and even through the pain, through the fear, recognition blooms across her small face. Daddy, she cries. Daddy, I found her. The nice lady found me. Marco and Theo exchange a look. In 15 years of working for Nicholas Castellano, they have seen him calculate, strategize, execute decisions that have cost men their lives and cost companies their fortunes. They have never seen him move toward his child like this, no calculation, no strategy, just pure motion, just a father crossing the room to touch his daughter's small hand. He reaches out. His fingers, decorated with a gold ring that costs more than most people's cars, touch Emma's forehead with absolute gentleness. He traces the line of the gash. His expression doesn't change, but something ancient and terrible stirs in his eyes. "I have you," he says to Emma. Then his gaze shifts to Nora. "What is your name?" Nora's mouth is dry. She is acutely aware that she has not showered in 4 days, that she is wearing the same waitress uniform she wore yesterday and the day before that there is a hole in her left shoe and her hair is matted and her hands are shaking. She is acutely aware that this man's suit could pay her hospital bills for a year. She is acutely aware that she should be terrified. But Emma's hand is gripping hers. "Nora," she says. "Nora Sinclair." Nicholas Castellano studies her for a long moment. The emergency room holds its breath. A cardiac monitor beeps somewhere down the hall. Rain continues to hammer the windows. The fluorescent lights hum their endless fluorescent hum. "You brought her here," he says. It is not a question. "She was hit by a car," Nora says, and her voice comes out barely a whisper, shattered like glass. "On 5th and Maple. I was walking nearby. I heard the impact. I picked her up and I ran." "You knew her?" "No. I did not know her. She needed help." Nicholas looks at Emma. Emma looks at Nora. Marco and Theo stand motionless, trying to process what they are witnessing, the impossible sight of their boss, the man who ordered executions with the same tone he uses to order coffee, gently brushing a strand of wet hair from this stranger's face. "Thank you," Nicholas says to Nora. And the words carry weight. The words carry promise. The words carry danger and gratitude twisted together like vines around an iron fence. "You can go," he says. "You can leave now." Nora nods. She releases Emma's hand slowly. The child's fingers grip her for a moment. "Please, do not leave me," but Nicholas is there now, and Emma's eyes fix on her father like he is the only solid thing in a world of water. Nora steps back. She picks up her backpack from the floor. $34 in her pocket. Everything she owns in this canvas bag. A foreclosure notice she received 3 days ago, folded and unfolded so many times the creases are starting to tear. She turns to leave. "Nora Sinclair," Nicholas calls out. His voice stops her like a hand on her shoulder. "Where do you live?" She does not answer for a long moment. The truth hangs in her throat like a swallowed stone. "My car," she finally says. "A Honda Civic. It is parked behind the Shell station on Figueroa." Nicholas Castellano nods slowly. He does not react. He does not show surprise or judgment or pity, the one thing that might have destroyed Nora completely in this moment. He simply nods, as if this is information he has recorded, filed away, and will return to when the time is right. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. The twist in this story will absolutely shock you. Now, let us go back to the beginning. Let us understand how a woman with $34 to her name came to be in an emergency room at midnight, holding the daughter of the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. Let us rewind to the day before. Let us rewind to the truth of Nora Sinclair's life. 3 days before the hospital. Dawn breaks over Los Angeles, pink light touching the windows of the Harrington Hotel on Wilshire Boulevard. Inside a silver Honda Civic parked behind a Shell gas station 4 blocks away, Nora Sinclair wakes to the sound of her own stomach growling. She is 29 years old. She owns a backpack, 2 uniforms, 1 pair of shoes. $34 in her pocket. That is it. That is everything. The car smells like stale coffee and the vinyl seats crack beneath her when she shifts position. Rain from last night still beads on the windows. She does not turn on the engine. The gas gauge hovers just above empty, and she cannot afford to fill it until Friday. She lies still for a moment, counting 1, 2, 3. Breathing exercises she learned from a shelter counselor. Stay calm. Stay present. Stay alive. At 6:30, she climbs into the front seat and drives to the Shell station 3 blocks away. The teenage clerk, Marcus, 17, acne scars, pretends not to notice when she uses the bathroom key. The bathroom smells like industrial cleaner and regret. She brushes her teeth using tap water and a toothbrush she got from a dollar store. She washes her face and her armpits with paper towels, cold water shocking her skin awake. She changes into her housekeeping uniform in the toilet stall, grey polyester, the Harrington Hotel logo stitched in gold thread. The pants are 2 sizes too big. She cinches them with a belt made from a torn pillowcase. Marcus watches her walk out with pity in his eyes but says nothing. Nobody says anything. Invisibility is its own kind of silence. She drives to the Harrington Hotel, parks in the employee lot between a Tesla and a BMW. 8 years she has worked here. Double shifts, holidays, every hour she could get. She should have savings. She has nothing. The hotel is a 5-star establishment on Wilshire Boulevard. Guests pay $400 a night to sleep in bed she makes. They leave tips on nightstands, $5, sometimes $10. She has never seen that money. Not once in 8 years. 6 months ago, she stood in the office of Douglas Hale, the hotel manager. He was 52 years old, grey hair slicked back with pomade, an expensive watch catching the light, Rolex, probably $12,000. He stood too close to her. The air between them felt thin. "You are short again this week, Nora," he said. "Your register is off by $300. She knew she was not short. She counted twice. She always counted twice. "Mr. Hale, I was careful." "Are you calling me a liar?" His hand brushed her lower back. She flinched. His smile carved itself into his face like a wound that would not close. "I could report this discrepancy. You would never work in this city again. Or—" He paused. His voice dropped low. "We forget about it. You just need to be more cooperative." She walked away. Her hand shook for the rest of the shift. Present day. 6:15 in the morning. Nora stands in the hotel laundry room, alone, folding sheets at a speed that makes her shoulders ache. The industrial washers hum their low, mechanical song. She lifts her shirt slightly, checking herself in the window's dark reflection. Scars running in every direction like a map of hell. Some are old, faded to white lines. Some are newer, still carrying the pink rawness of healing flesh. She runs her fingers across them without feeling anything. That is the cruelest part. They do not hurt anymore. That means they have been there long enough to feel like home. She pulls her shirt down when another employee enters. Margaret Chen, another housekeeper, pretends not to see. Everyone pretends not to see. At 3 in the afternoon, Nora leaves her shift at the Harrington and drives to St. Mary's Community Shelter on 5th Street. She volunteers 3 evenings a week. She has nothing, but she gives what she can. Time. Presence. The terrible, fragile gift of paying attention to people the world has forgotten. The shelter is a brick building painted institutional grey. The air inside smells like canned vegetables and cleaning products and human despair, layered so thick you can taste it. That is when she sees Emma for the first time. A little girl. 6 years old. Brought in by a social worker named Patricia. The girl has bruises on her arms, finger marks, the shapes of violence made flesh. She wears a dress that costs more than Nora has earned in a month. She is clutching a small stuffed rabbit, one ear torn, the white fur yellowed with age. Found her wandering on 5th Street near the park, Patricia says, exhausted. No ID. No way to identify her. She will not tell us her name. She will not speak to anyone except to ask for her daddy. Nora kneels down. The girl's eyes are storm grey. She has the kind of face that belongs in paintings. "Hi, sweetheart," Nora whispers. "Are you hungry?" Emma nods slowly. She does not speak. But when Nora reaches out her hand, the girl takes it like it is a lifeline thrown to someone drowning in clear water. Over the next 2 days, Nora stays close to Emma whenever she volunteers. She brings food stolen from the hotel kitchen, bread rolls, fruit, roasted chicken wrapped in napkins. She reads to her from children's books. Emma will not speak to the other volunteers, but she holds Nora's hand. During quiet moments, she whispers one word over and over. "Daddy. Daddy. Daddy." "Your daddy loves you," Nora tells her. "Your daddy is looking for you." She does not know if this is true. She does not know anything about this child except that she is loved and that love has not been enough to protect her. On the 3rd night, summer arrives in Los Angeles like a curse. The temperature climbs to 101 degrees. The air tastes like exhaust and dust. Then, at 8:45, the sky ruptures. Lightning cracks open the clouds. Thunder shakes the building. The rain does not fall, it attacks, turning the streets into rivers in seconds. The temperature plummets. Cold wind tears through the windows. Nora is walking Emma from the shelter to a foster placement 2 blocks away when the child suddenly breaks free from her hand. Emma runs into the street. The rain is so heavy that visibility collapses. Nora screams her name. A car emerges from the rain like a ghost. Headlights bright as accusation. Brakes screeching, a sound like metal tearing. The sickening thud of impact. The moment stretches. The world becomes very quiet. Emma flies backward. Her small body hits the wet pavement with a force that stops time itself. She does not cry out. She does not make any sound at all. Nora runs to her, rain soaking them both, and scoops the child into her arms. Emma's eyes flutter open. There is no pain in them. Only confusion. Only the terrible clarity of a child understanding for the first time that the world can hurt you without warning or reason. "Stay with me, baby," Nora whispers. She runs into the street, one arm cradling Emma, the other raised into the rain. "Stay with me." A woman in a silver sedan stops. She does not ask questions. She simply sees a soaked young woman holding an injured child and she opens the passenger door. Nora climbs in, water pooling around her feet. Emma's blood drips onto the grey fabric of the car seat. "Where?" the woman asks. "St. Mary's emergency room," Nora says. "Fastest route." "Please." The drive takes 8 minutes that feel like hours. Nora watches Emma's breathing. In and out. In and out. A small body so fragile that a car can break it in a single moment of wrong timing. She whispers prayers she does not believe in, bargaining with a God who has never answered her before. At 11:58 in the evening, they pull into the emergency room parking lot. Red and white lights flash across the wet asphalt. Nora carries Emma through the sliding glass doors. "Help!" Her voice breaks like glass dropped on concrete. "Someone help us!" Nurses appear instantly. Emma is taken from her arms and placed on a stretcher. Monitors beep. An oxygen mask covers the child's small face. She disappears through double doors and Nora is left standing in the emergency room in soaking wet clothes, $34 in her pocket, a foreclosure notice folded in her backpack, watching the doors swing closed. She sinks into a plastic chair. She does not sit there long. Because at exactly midnight, a man walks through those same doors. He is tall. He is devastating in the way that violence can be devastating when it wears an expensive suit. His eyes are the color of a storm at dusk. He moves like he has never had to hurry because the world has spent years learning to move out of his way. Behind him are 2 men in black suits who look like they could tear through a building if they were ordered to. He approaches the nurse's station. "Emma Castellano," he says. His voice is deep and solid like an oath. A 6-year-old girl. She was brought in within the last 10 minutes. The nurse's face changes. Recognition. Fear. Yes, she is in imaging. We are assessing. Where? Third floor. But sir, only family members. He is already walking toward the elevators. The two men follow. One of them, Marco, with a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone, glances back and makes eye contact with Nora for exactly 1 second. His expression says everything. You have just touched something that belongs to the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. You have just become visible to someone who prefers his world very, very small. Nora does not move. She does not speak. She simply sits in the plastic chair and understands that her life has just divided into 2 parts, before this moment and after this moment. And whatever comes next, everything has changed. The office is dark except for the light pooling from the desk lamp. Rain taps against the floor-to-ceiling windows like fingertips asking for entry. Nicholas Castellano sits with his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles have gone white. On the mahogany desk in front of him lies a crumpled piece of paper. A foreclosure notice. Not his own. Hers. He has been staring at it for 17 minutes. The clock on the wall shows 3:44 in the morning. The house is asleep around him, Emma in her bedroom 3 floors above, finally resting without nightmares for the first time in 72 hours. The staff sent home. Marco and Theo dismissed. Just Nicholas, alone in the dark, holding the evidence of a woman's entire life collapsing into 894 square feet of steel and rust. The sound of barefoot steps on marble pulls him from his thoughts. She appears in the doorway like a ghost who forgot to be invisible. Nora Sinclair, wrapped in a white robe that belongs to his house but not to her, her wet hair hanging in tangles down her back, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. She has been crying. Recently. Quietly. The kind of crying that happens when you believe no one is listening. I couldn't sleep, she says. Her voice is barely a whisper, like wind moving through an empty room. I was looking for water and I saw the light. Nicholas doesn't move. He simply watches her, this woman who appeared in his emergency room 4 days ago holding his daughter like she had been waiting her entire life to find her. This woman who owns nothing but a 2003 Honda Civic and $34 that she keeps in a freezer bag in her backpack for reasons that have nothing to do with preservation and everything to do with insurance. Sit, he says. She hesitates. The robe is expensive, Italian silk, worth more than the car she sleeps in. The chair he's gesturing to is leather, hand-stitched, older than she is. She feels like she might contaminate it just by sitting. She sits anyway. For a long time, neither speaks. The rain continues its patient assault on the windows. Somewhere in the house, a pipe settles with a metallic groan. The kitchen refrigerator cycles on, a sound like breathing. Tell me about the notice, Nicholas says finally. Nora's eyes flick to the desk. To the paper. Her jaw tightens. Where did you get that? I had Marco run a background check. Your name appeared in Los Angeles County foreclosure filings from 18 months ago. The property was seized. The bank sold it. Nora stands up. She walks to the window and presses her palm against the glass. It's cold. She needs that coldness, something real, something that proves she's not dreaming this. My mother, Nora says. She owned a house in Boyle Heights. She bought it in 1989 with my father. He died when I was 6. After that, it was just her and me. She worked as a seamstress. We were never rich, but we had that house. It was everything to her. Nicholas listens without moving. She got sick in 2019. Cancer, like Nora stops. Like Emma's mother. She needed surgery. The insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatment. I started working at the Harrington Hotel. I promised her I would save enough. I could save enough. I was working double shifts, overtime, holidays. 8 years of it. She turns to face him. $47,000. That's what I should have saved. That's what I calculated I could save by the time her surgery was scheduled. Instead, I had $3,200 in my account when she died. Because Douglas Hale was stealing it the entire time. Nicholas's expression doesn't change, but something cold and dangerous stirs in his chest. He told me my tips went to a general pool, Nora continues. That we all contributed to it and it was distributed evenly. I was making $50 to $70 a night in tips. Times 5 shifts a week. For 8 years. The math never added up, but I was too exhausted to question it. I was working 14-hour days. I couldn't think straight. She wraps her arms around herself. The robe suddenly feels too thin. After my mother died, I couldn't pay the mortgage. I asked Douglas for a raise. He laughed. He actually laughed. He said women who couldn't manage their own finances shouldn't be allowed to manage anything, that I was lucky he'd kept me employed this long, that if I complained to anyone, he'd make sure no hotel in Los Angeles would hire me. What about the bank? Nicholas asks. His voice is quiet. Dangerously quiet. I tried to negotiate. The house was already in foreclosure. I had nothing to leverage. My father's name was still on the deed because my mother never had the paperwork changed. They said that made it more complicated. 6 months later, the bank seized it. Sold it at auction for $41,000. My mother's entire life, gone in an afternoon, bought by someone else who could afford lawyers. Nora's voice doesn't break, but her hands do. They shake like leaves in November wind. Nicholas stands. He moves toward her slowly, each step deliberate, controlled. When he reaches her, he places his hands on her shoulders. She flinches, old reflex, memory of hands that hurt, but she doesn't pull away. Look at me, he says. She does. His eyes are the color of a storm at dusk, dark and endless and somehow both terrible and merciful at once. What Douglas Hale did to you, Nicholas says, was not your failure. It was his crime. And every person he made feel like you were small, worthless, invisible, they were his victims too. You are not the first woman he has stolen from. You will not be the last. Unless something changes. Nora's breath catches. What are you saying? I'm saying that in this world, there are people like Douglas Hale who survive by convincing people like you that you deserve what you got. That somehow your poverty is your fault, your homelessness is your weakness, your theft is your failure to be careful enough. Nicholas drops his hands but doesn't step back. And then there are people like me who can make sure he never steals from anyone else again. Nicholas, no. If you do something, if you. I've already done much worse for much less, he interrupts. His voice carries the weight of that statement like a confession. I have men who would follow me into hell itself. Douglas Hale is not hell. Douglas Hale is barely a complication. Nora shakes her head. I don't want that. I don't want violence. I just want. What do you want, Nora? The question hangs in the dark office like a bell that's been struck and refuses to stop ringing. I want my mother's house back, she whispers. I know that's impossible. But I want it. I want to know why Douglas got to steal from us and nobody cared. I want Margaret Harrington to understand that the maids she exploits are human beings. I want. She stops. She doesn't have the language for what she wants. Justice feels too small a word. Vengeance feels too large. I want people like me to stop disappearing, she finishes. I want to matter. Nicholas steps back and returns to his desk. He picks up the foreclosure notice, studies it like it contains coordinates to something precious. The house sold for $41,000. It's worth substantially more now. The buyer is a developer. I know him. He owes me several favors. Nora's eyes widen. Nicholas, you can't. I'm not asking permission. He folds the notice carefully and tucks it into his jacket pocket. One of the favors he owes me is about to come due. Within 30 days, you will own that house again. It will be in your name only, with the deed properly transferred, free and clear. I can't accept that. You don't have to accept it. The transaction is between me and my associate. You simply get to keep something that should have been yours all along. He turns to face her. But that's not the only thing that changes. Starting tomorrow, I'm filing a complaint with the California Department of Industrial Relations. Every worker at the Harrington Hotel is going to be audited. Every penny Douglas stole, every hour he forced his staff to work without proper compensation, all of it is coming out. By the time the investigation concludes, he won't have enough money left for bail. Nora sinks into the chair. She feels like she's falling, like the ground has become unreliable. Why are you doing this? She asks. Nicholas moves to the window. He presses his palm against the glass where her hand was moments before. Outside, the Los Angeles skyline glitters like a circuit board, 1,000 lights in the dark. Because Emma asked me yesterday where you sleep, he says. She wanted to know if you were safe. And when I told her you live in a car, she cried. My 6-year-old daughter cried because a woman she's known for 4 days is living in a parking lot while the man who took her money sleeps in a mansion. He turns back to Nora. I have spent 15 years building an empire. I have destroyed men who threatened my family. I have made choices that will haunt me until I die. But I have never had a daughter cry over someone else's suffering and learn something about myself that I didn't want to know. His voice is steady, but something in his eyes has shifted. Something raw and exposed. What did you learn? Nora whispers. That all the power in the world is worthless if it can't be used to protect the people who matter. A sound interrupts them. A car engine, distant but distinct, cutting off in the driveway below. Nicholas doesn't look at the window, but his entire body tenses. Marco or Theo would never arrive without calling first. His hand moves to the small of his back, where the weight of a gun usually rests. But he has been unarmed in his own house for 3 days now, because Emma is there, and he made a promise to himself that she would grow up without violence in her home. Stay here, he tells Nora. His voice has shifted. The tenderness is gone, replaced by something older and colder. He moves toward the office door. Nicholas, Nora stands. He holds up a hand. Do not come downstairs. Do not open the door. And do not let Emma see you if she wakes up frightened. That's an order, not a request. He's gone before she can answer, moving through the dark house like he's walked these corridors 1,000 times before, because he has. Moving toward whatever has just arrived in the driveway, toward whatever threat has followed him home. Nora stands alone in the dark office, the rain still tapping against the windows, the foreclosure notice still in his jacket pocket, and understands that she has just been protected by a man who knows exactly how to destroy the people who threatened her. 3 floors below, in a black sedan parked in the shadows of the driveway, Douglas Hale watches the office light go out. He watches a figure move through the house. He watches and waits and plans, because cornered men do not surrender quietly. They destroy everything on their way down. The rain fell like 1,000 fists against the Honda Civic's roof, and Nora Sinclair sat motionless in the driver's seat, her fingers wrapped around the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. $34. That was all she had. Again. Back to the beginning, back to the nothing she'd clawed her way out of 8 years ago, back to the person she swore she would never be again. She was soaking wet. Her clothes clung to her skin like a second layer of shame. The cut on her cheek throbbed where Douglas's hand had connected, and there was a taste in her mouth, blood and rain and the bitter metal of defeat. The stuffed rabbit sat on the passenger seat, and when Nora looked at it, something inside her fractured like old glass. Emma had left it in her backpack. That small act of trust, that small piece of love, and Nora was throwing it away. She was throwing all of it away. The letter was still in Nicholas's hands by now. He'd found it on the desk in her room. He knew she was leaving. He knew she was running. And part of her had hoped, foolishly, desperately, that he would let her go quietly, that he would understand that some people were meant to disappear, that some lives were too broken to be worth saving. But Nicholas Castellano did not let things go quietly. The headlights appeared first, cutting through the storm like searchlights. Then another set. And another. Black SUVs, materializing from the rain like something from a nightmare, surrounding her beat-up Honda Civic with the precision of a military operation. Nora's heart stopped. Douglas Hale stepped out of the lead sedan, and two men she didn't recognize flanked him on either side. They moved with the casual menace of people who hurt others for a living. Douglas knocked on her window. His knuckles made a hollow sound against the glass. "Get out of the car, Nora." His voice was muffled by the rain, but the cruelty was unmistakable. This was not the manager she'd served drinks for 8 years. This was a man cornered, desperate, dangerous. A man who had nothing left to lose. Nora locked the doors. Her fingers found the ignition. She could drive. She could fight. She could. The crowbar came down without warning. The passenger window exploded inward, a shower of glass raining across the rabbit, and rough hands grabbed her jacket. They dragged her out into the storm, into the rain that felt like ice water, and Douglas had her by the hair, his fingers tangled in the wet strands. "You really thought you could embarrass me? Make me look weak in front of Margaret?" His breath was hot against her face. "You're going to pay for that." His hand came up. And then everything stopped. 12 men in black tactical gear emerged from the darkness like ghosts materializing from smoke. They surrounded Douglas and his men in seconds, moving with military precision that left no space for escape, no gaps in the circle. Weapons drawn. Silent. Professional. Marco stepped forward, his gun steady, his eyes colder than the November wind. "Step away from her." His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of an absolute command. Douglas released Nora, stumbling backward. His men froze. They recognized what was happening, the arrival of power so much greater than their own that resistance would be an insult. "This is a misunderstanding," Douglas started. "On your knees." Douglas collapsed to the asphalt, trembling like a wounded animal, like every nerve in his body had turned to ice water. His legs gave out before his mind accepted the reality. Nora watched it happen, watched the man who had stolen from her for 8 years, who had threatened her, who had made her life a prison of fear and hunger, reduced to begging. His men didn't even resist. Nicholas stepped out of the lead SUV. He didn't look at Douglas. He didn't acknowledge the rain or the men or the circle of power that had materialized in this forgotten gas station parking lot. He walked directly to Nora, and when he saw her, soaking wet, bleeding, shaking, something moved across his face that looked like it might destroy him. He knelt beside her. "I found your letter." His voice was rough, fractured. The tenderness was gone, replaced by something older and deeper. "Did you really think I'd let you go?" Nora's eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect Emma. Douglas won't stop. Margaret won't stop. I'm bringing them down on you. I don't need protection." Nicholas's hand moved to her face, his thumb brushing away rain that mixed with tears. "I need you. I've needed you since the moment you looked at my daughter in the hospital like she was your entire world. And I'm not letting that go." He helped her to her feet, wrapped his coat around her shoulders. The cashmere was worth more than everything she'd owned 2 weeks ago. She understood that now. She understood a lot of things now. Then Nicholas turned to Douglas. His voice, when he spoke, sounded like an oath carved from stone. 8 years you stole from her. 8 years you harassed her. 8 years you made her believe that she was worthless, invisible, nobody. That ends tonight. Douglas tried to crawl backward. "Please. I can explain. I can give you money, information, anything. I don't want explanations." Nicholas made a gesture. A second SUV pulled up to the edge of the parking lot. 2 men stepped out, tall, scarred, with the unmistakable bearing of people who operated in the spaces between mercy and survival. They smiled when they saw Douglas. It was the smile of predators who'd been offered fresh meat. Nicholas turned back to Nora. These men represent the Moretti family. They've been waiting for an opportunity to speak with Mr. Hale about his business practices. I'm giving them that opportunity. No. Douglas screamed as the men dragged him toward the SUV. No, please. I'll give you anything. Everything. Just let me go. Nora, tell him. Tell him I'm sorry. Nora? His voice fractured, became incoherent, faded into the storm as the SUV pulled away. By the time the taillights disappeared into the rain-soaked night, Douglas Hale had become a ghost. A cautionary tale. A man who'd made the mistake of thinking that invisible people had no one to protect them. Nora closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Nicholas was studying her face. His hands were still on her shoulders, anchoring her to solid ground. Behind him, Marco and Theo stood at careful distance, and in their eyes Nora saw something she'd never expected to see in the eyes of dangerous men: respect. These were men who'd been trained to break people, and they were watching their boss kneel beside a woman soaked in rain and fear, and not one of them thought it was weakness. "We're not done," Nicholas said. "Margaret Harrington is still in play." Nora shook her head. "She's just a woman. She's rich, she's connected, but she's a predator." Nicholas's voice was ice. "She's been running exploitation rings for 15 years. Dozens of women like you, with wages stolen, documents falsified, lies layered on top of lies. She's going to prison." The next morning, before the sun cleared the Los Angeles skyline, the Harrington mansion exploded with activity. FBI agents swarmed the gates. Warrants hung in the air like judgments. Margaret Harrington was arrested in her silk robe on her Bel Air driveway, cameras flashing, her face broadcast on every news channel by noon. By evening, the full extent of her crimes were public. Tax evasion, labor trafficking, wire fraud, racketeering. The exploitation ring, decades of it, hundreds of workers, millions in stolen wages, was dismantled in 72 hours. Her assets frozen. Her reputation demolished. Her power, which had seemed so absolute, revealed as paper and smoke. She was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. Too quick, too easy, too merciful, but systematic destruction nonetheless. Everything Margaret Harrington had built was erased. Everything she believed in, that wealth protected you, that connections insulated you, that power meant you could never fall, was proven false. Standing in the rain with Nicholas's coat around her shoulders, Nora understood something that she'd never understood before, that there were different kinds of power. Margaret's power was a facade. Nicholas's power was real because he used it to protect rather than exploit, because he understood that true dominion meant responsibility. Nicholas cupped her face. His hands were gentle despite everything that had just happened, everything that was still happening in the distance. His dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not ever again. You're going to stay with me and Emma. You're going to build something with us. And you're going to stop believing that your life is something that can be discarded." Nora nodded, unable to speak, unable to do anything but believe him. The rain continued to fall, washing the parking lot clean, washing away the oil stains and the broken glass and the remnants of the life she'd been trying to escape. Behind them, the gas station lights cast everything in gold. And in that moment, soaking wet and bleeding and alive, Nora Sinclair finally understood what it meant to belong to someone. Not to be owned. Not to be controlled. But to be chosen. To be protected. To be loved. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. 2 weeks had passed since the rain washed the parking lot clean, and Los Angeles was learning to breathe again. The Harrington Hotel stood shuttered, its gold lettering dulled under federal seals. Inside those walls, investigators catalogued years of theft. Former employees lined up to tell their stories, all of them identical to Nora's. Years of wages pocketed. Tips vanished. Threats whispered in back hallways. Douglas Hale's empty apartment sat gathering dust. He would never be found. Margaret Harrington's trial dominated every news broadcast, her perfectly sculpted face now shown in handcuffs and prison orange. The woman who had believed herself untouchable was now very much touched. Nora sat curled beside Emma on the mansion's living room sofa, the afternoon light spilling across the cream-colored cushions. A television played low in the corner, showing Margaret's sentencing. 40 years. Emma glanced up from her coloring book, crayons forgotten in her small lap. "Is the bad lady gone?" Emma asked, her voice small and certain. Nora pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Yes, sweetheart. She's gone forever." Nicholas stood in the doorway, watching them without moving. Marco entered quietly, approaching with a folder held respectfully at his chest. For 15 years, he had watched this man dismantle empires. He had never seen him stand like this, simply watching, as though the moment itself was worth more than territory. "Boss, the last of the Harrington accounts have been seized," Marco said, his voice careful and even. $47,000 recovered. Every penny she was owed. 8 years of stolen wages. Nicholas did not look away from Nora. "Give it to her." "Already transferred to her account this morning." The room held its silence. Emma returned to her coloring. The television murmured about federal prosecution. And Nora's phone, sitting on the glass coffee table, suddenly felt impossibly heavy. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Opened the banking app. Stared at the number. $47,000. 8 years compressed into a 6-figure deposit. She covered her mouth. The tears came without warning, not the desperate tears of the parking lot, but something different. Something clean. Nicholas crossed the room and sat beside her, the leather couch creaking beneath his weight. He did not speak. He simply sat, his presence solid as a stone wall around her breaking heart. "I don't know what to say," Nora whispered. "Say you'll stay," Nicholas replied, his voice deep and certain like an oath carved in granite. "Not as an employee. As family. As mine." Nora looked at Emma, then back at him. The little girl watched them with the unself-conscious wisdom of children. "I'm not going anywhere." The weeks that followed were constructed of small moments that should have felt ordinary but never did. Nora teaching Emma to ride a bicycle in the mansion courtyard, holding the seat steady as the girl pedaled forward, arms spread like wings. Nicholas watching from the stone archway, that expression Marco called terrifying because the boss actually looked happy. Nora cooking dinner for the first time in years, a simple pasta, nothing expensive, just food made with hands that knew how to care. The kitchen filled with steam and garlic and the sound of her humming. Nicholas came home from a meeting and found them both asleep on the sofa, Emma's head on Nora's chest, a storybook open on the cushion between them. He did not wake them. He simply covered them with a cashmere blanket and stood guard like a sentinel. "In 15 years, I have never seen him sit like that," Theo observed to Marco one evening, both men positioned discreetly near the kitchen threshold. "Just watching her sleep." "She changed something in him," Marco said quietly. "Something that was broken." One evening, Nicholas took Nora back to St. Mary's Hospital. They walked through the emergency room where she had arrived with Emma bleeding and broken, where he had first seen the woman who would unravel his entire world. The waiting room was quiet now, fluorescent lights humming their endless mechanical song. A nurse passed, nodding respectfully. "This is where everything changed," Nicholas said, his hand finding the small of her back. "I walked in here with nothing," Nora replied, watching the spot where Emma had lain on the gurney. "I walked out with everything." "So did I." He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. The leather was butter soft, the kind that cost more than her monthly salary used to be. Inside lay a ring. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond that caught the harsh hospital light and transformed it into something golden. "I'm not good at this," Nicholas said, and for the first time, Nora heard vulnerability beneath the controlled certainty. "I've built my life on violence and control. On taking what I wanted and destroying what threatened me. But with you, I don't want to control anything. I just want to protect you. To give you the life you should have always had. The life you earned by being brave enough to save my daughter." Nora's hand shook. Her voice broke. "Nicholas, I'm nobody. I slept in my car. I have scars and trauma, Anne." "You're the woman who saved my daughter," he interrupted, stepping closer. "Who showed her what kindness looks like when she'd known only cruelty? Who taught me that trust is possible even after betrayal? You're not nobody. You're everything." She said yes. The word fell from her lips like a prayer answered. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. In the parking lot outside, Marco sat in the driver's seat of a black SUV, engine idling. Theo stood with the passenger door open, watching the hospital entrance. When Nicholas and Nora emerged, he was carrying her, spinning her in a slow circle as she laughed, a sound neither of them had heard before, utterly unguarded and alive. Marco's jaw dropped slightly. Theo grinned. "Did the boss just smile?" Marco asked quietly. "Told you," Theo replied. That woman changed him completely. The drive back to the mansion carried them through Los Angeles as evening fell. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows like scattered stars. Nora reached over and took Nicholas's hand. He squeezed it, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. For the first time in years, neither of them was looking over their shoulder. The war was over. They had survived it. 6 months later, the wedding took place in the mansion garden at sunset. A small ceremony. Emma in a flower girl dress, beaming as she scattered petals down the stone pathway. Marco and Theo witnessing. A handful of trusted people bearing witness to something impossible, a man like Nicholas Castellano, ruthless and hard as a blade, now standing before a woman in a simple white dress, unable to look away from her face. When they exchanged vows, Nicholas's voice was steady but thick with something unnamed. "You walked into my life at the darkest moment and brought light. I promise to protect you, to honor you, and to never let you feel invisible again." Nora's words trembled. "You gave me a home when I had nothing. You showed me that my past doesn't define my future. I promise to love you, to protect Emma, and to never stop fighting for this family." They kissed as Emma cheered, her small voice bright as bells. Later, on the same balcony where Nora had stood months ago feeling like her life was borrowed, Nicholas wrapped his arms around her from behind. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like promises kept. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking about the woman I was 6 months ago," Nora said softly. "Sleeping in her car. $34 to her name. Convinced she'd never be worth saving. And now? Now I'm standing in a home that's mine. Married to a man who sees me. Raising a daughter who calls me Mom. It doesn't feel real." Nicholas turned her to face him, his hand cupping her cheek with a gentleness that still surprised her. "It's real. And you earned every bit of it. Not because I gave it to you. Because you were brave enough to reach out your hand when a child needed you. That one act changed everything." Emma ran up the balcony steps, breathless and laughing. She wrapped her arms around both of them. The three of them stood together, a family built from ashes, from violence transformed into protection, from two broken people who had learned that sometimes, one hand reached out at exactly the right moment can change an entire life. The camera pulls back, showing the three of them walking into the mansion. The door closes behind them. The estate bathes in golden sunset light. Safe. Whole. Home. I spent 8 years believing I was powerless, believing that my life was defined by the cruelty of others, that my circumstances were my destiny. But the night I saved Emma, I learned something that changed everything. Power isn't measured in money or status or connections. Real power is about choosing to act when everything tells you to walk away. It's about reaching out when you have nothing to give except presence. It's about love strong enough to crack foundations. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to remember that their circumstances don't define their worth. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story about a woman who refused to stay broken. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had someone reach out to you at exactly the right moment? I read every single one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that broken people can become whole again. See you tomorrow.